Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode on men's mental health. We had a little bit of a technical issue. If you might notice, the audio sounds a little off. That's because we completely lost our podcast mic audio, which happens to the best of us. But what we decided to do was use some of the cutting edge AI tools that we could find and try to replace the audio. But hopefully you'll bear with us because we think this topic is really important. We hope it resonates with you.
Let us know if these voices actually sound like us. If it sounds a little bit different, we have some theories. Maybe we'll get into them on the next episode.
All right. See you soon.
Welcome to Curiosity Theory. Thanks for joining us, my herd of nerds out there, all you freaks and geeks. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about mental health. Some of the challenges that Justin and I have faced, maybe you can relate, and some of the things that we do to maintain and push through the tougher times, building community, that sort of thing.
We also dive into the science of all this. There's some really interesting studies that show some novel things that you probably haven't heard before about mental health. So I'm excited to dive in. Stay tuned with us on Curiosity Theory. So Dakotah, man, I want to start this episode with something that we've never done before. I want to do a mental health check-in because that's what we're going to be talking about today. So how do you feel like your mental health is these days?
I feel like my mental health is pretty good. I under like a lot of pressure. I put a lot of pressure on myself, but generally I'd say it's pretty good. I think at this point in my life, I have a decent maintenance routine that I keep up with that keeps me kind of running on all cylinders.
What do you feel like how do you feel like your mental health is good? Because it's like if you put a lot of pressure on yourself and things are going well, does that mean that your mental health will be good if things are going well? Is it like heavily correlated with that for you?
That's a good question. I guess the pressure is sort of like increases stress,
Mhm.
which doesn't feel great all the time. That sort of the impending stress of like things that you're trying to do.
Right.
But I always feel like when that starts to mount, some of the things that I like to do, hanging out with friends, maybe working out, exercising, something like that, kind of helps to bring the equilibrium back. But I think that another thing that is really helpful, even under the pressure that I would say I'll put on myself, is realizing kind of like how grateful I am and how blessed I am to be in the position that I am. And that, you kind of like take that deep breath and you're like, Actually, everything's okay." You know, my brain may be starting to like worry about things that don't really need to be worried about. And this is also one of the reasons that I appreciate the cosmological perspective so much.
Mm.
It's that, like our brains evolved to think that our survival and everything going right for us is the most important thing in the universe. It's sort of like nature's way of tricking you into, thinking that you're so important that you need to get your DNA to replicate. But, really, it's a little bit of mind game. I feel like maybe our DNA plays on us.
So do you feel like you're decentering yourself and that is productive for you in terms of your mental health?
I think that it can be at times. It's like a tool in the toolkit.
Mm.
It's like a tool, in my tool belt can do that. And it's like, oh, you know, everything doesn't actually really matter that much. Sometimes that can be helpful. Sometimes you can get like nihilistic with it.
I can see the other side of that.
Yeah, for me, I think it's a little pressure release valve. All, everything's okay. The universe is going to keep on going on.
I think I sometimes get caught in that actually like the bad side of that. Like if I am still for too long and I start pondering how insignificant everything is in the context of the greater universe, I'm like, why should I do anything? Why does it matter? I had that thought before, for sure.
What keeps you going?
Not thinking about that too much.
Had that just like shoving it down.
Well, yeah, I think conversely, actually, I guess the thing that kind of gives me the peace of mind is actually maybe recentering myself in that regard, where I'm like, um, the things that I like my life, the importance of my life is defined by what I believe is important. And if I'm doing things that I think are important, then that matters, right? And it doesn't have to matter in the grand scheme of the universe, actually. Like it's actually more important that it matters to me.
What are the things that matter to you? What are things that worry you?
Well, I think first and foremost, and I think we're both really aligned on this, like I'm a purpose-driven individual, and it is very important for me. I think sometimes I prioritize this above my own health, above my own well-being,
Your purpose?
to be working or moving in alignment with what I perceive my purpose to be. And so,
What is that? Sorry, I know it's
no, I think it's an important question. Like, I have this profound, deep desire to teach the world, like to bring helpful knowledge to the forefront of society. And I think, like, since I left college, like I've pretty much been focused on that. In every manifestation, every project I've done has achieved that in some way, or I'm just not my best self in doing it. Right. I tried to work a 9 to 5 job, and
little corporate. You had a little corporate stint, right?
yeah, I worked in tech. I was a tech consultant at Accenture, and I remember being like the least motivated version of myself. And that was a pretty dark time in my mental health journey. Because I was so young, I didn't know myself that well in terms of like needing to be moving and aligning with this purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And so I felt like so dark because things just weren't working right. I didn't feel motivated to get up in the morning because I wasn't like, okay, every day is a step towards this purpose. And so I think when I do feel that happening, it definitely has a strong effect on my mood, my overall just motivation, desire to do things. Quick tangent on that, like, last week I had a mentor, Jamel Lynch, pass away.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, saw him in the hospital about 48 hours before he passed, cancer. And, that was a rough experience. He was a very purpose-driven, motivated guy. Started a nonprofit, did my first STEM programs under Jamel. Like, he was at my age when I met him. He was like 31 or so, in his early 30s. And he just believed in me. And he allowed me to basically create this program. They saw how purpose-driven I was, and at the end of the line, even though I was a 22-year-old kid, didn't know much, and he just kind of bet on me. And just his passing just had me kind of in a weird headspace for like the past, a couple weeks or so. Like, even I know there were some things we were supposed to do, and I was like, "Yo, man, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm just not moving like the way I want to." And then I actually had a thought later, and I was like, Jamel is such a driven guy. Like, he'd love to hear the updates that I would have for him about like this moving forward. I'm making this mission happen, like I'm making stuff happen. And I think, like, if anything, like Jamel's legacy was very much that, you know, uh, that spirit of a hustler, making stuff happen and moving in alignment with your purpose. And so it's like I gotta get back on track. That's what Jamel would have wanted.
Yeah. That's it's like an interesting tension there, which you just described. Because I remember you texted me that you were like, "Hey, Ben, sorry, you've been focused, kind of been like defocused for a week or two or whatever." And I don't remember exactly how I responded. Hopefully, I responded like
Yeah, yeah.
it was thoughtful, but there is that that when you're offset, you like get knocked out of that equilibrium by something impactful like that, like somebody who's been impactful in your life and like where you feel like you're at now. And, for somebody like that to get sick and to pass is naturally something that is going to knock you off your center. And for somebody who's very driven, which I also feel the same way, as a driven person, it can be difficult to like to hold all of that at the same time, and you really don't feel like you can let up on the gas. But then there's also this aspect where you kind of like we're both like we're in this together. There's a team. There's like people are relying on you, and so even and maybe this is a I'm sure everybody experiences this, but this is probably something much more probably something that I think is maybe under talked about with men is, you know, needing to have a purpose, needing to have this drive, having people that rely on you, and kind of feeling like that is forefront and that everything else is secondary.
Mhm.
And then you just kind of have to like figure out on your own how to deal with whatever loss that you're feeling and not be like losing efficiency somewhere or
Yeah.
becoming less productive. And it's a difficult thing to navigate But, I think a good thing is that, I've known you for a while, you're pretty emotionally mature. And so you're able to to see that and realize that within yourself and slow down if you need to, and communicate that with people, right? It's not something that you have to keep hidden. And it's kind of like a free flowing and it's an understanding thing because, we all been there. I have my periods too where I'm not feeling great and, maybe it being less productive, but am gathering myself mentally or emotionally.
Yeah, I think that that is definitely a newer experience for me too, like, being able to just because I was like, man, I just felt compelled, like, "You know what? Let me just make sure I'm telling people that, like, I'm going through this," you know? When I was younger, and I think this is part of my perception of what men were supposed to be, and, me identifying as like, "Well, I'm this leader, people depend on me, I'll make stuff happen," right? Like you said, prioritizing those things, you're not worry about what is going on with me, like, you just want me to be this solid foundation for you and create this thing that works, right? And I was like, "Well, no," because, like, if I'm, like, not all the way right, like, people deserve to know that, and I think that is an emotionally mature thing for men to do, and sometimes it requires a degree. I think sometimes I think as a younger person, I'm like, well, like you're not tough if you reveal these weaknesses. Like, like you're going through something, you feel pain, like that's weak. You don't need to tell people that. But now I think like a lot of the strongest men I know are able to admit one, how human they are, and two, that they're going through something in this time, and like that's okay. And I think like yeah, I've had the benefit of accountability. I think from a lot of women who are friends of mine, or like even some of my male friends too, that were ahead of the curve on this. Like I definitely was slow to learn these things.
Yeah, well, especially I kind of feel for young men who are online because a lot of the loudest, I think, male voices do push out that you should never let anybody know your weakness. You should never be, you gotta kind of suck it up and move through. And, apart, and there's an element of that I do feel like I've absorbed at some level. Um, there aren't many things that I don't think that I can do if I put my head down and don't let anybody stop me, anybody, knock me off my confidence about it. And so, I have elements of that inside me, but I think it's important that this thing is that drive is a tool that you use. And it's not like this monster that grows inside you that handicaps you mentally and emotionally because you can't break free from those chains.
Yeah, I think that's such a great way to describe it. Like just having a series of different maybe philosophies in your toolkit
Right.
to handle specific situations. Like, like yeah, maybe some of these really tough guys that talk about how you have to, at a certain point as a man, like I've had this experience where it's like, all right, it's time to make this happen. And what I need to hear is like, get up, work hard, no excuses, right? And so that philosophy today to make sure that this podcast is set up and we're all like I need to make stuff happen, right? And so I can't be wallowing in this specific situation. That's not the right tool for this time period, right? But if I'm not sending you stuff when we talked about getting it, and I'm just kind of falling behind on stuff, okay, maybe a different tool in the toolkit is necessary.
Yeah, I like that framework of your mental toolkit, actually housing different philosophies, different life or personal philosophies that you can access when needed, and being able to cycle through those again as needed, and not feeling like you're jeopardizing or offending any one of them at any given time, right? Like your need to be seen and connect with people does not it is not in any way being degraded by the fact that right now, you need to turn up and turn off for a second. And that's fine, right?
Mhm.
And it's not gonna be like that forever, right? And then you can pull back and do whatever it is that you need to do, whatever that looks like for you. I really like that idea of collecting these different philosophical outlooks.
Right.
Because that, yeah, it's kind of, it may seem like at times they uh, are conflicting,
Mhm.
and maybe they are
Yeah.
conflicting, but that's okay. There's no You don't have like some philosophical integrity score where you have to adhere to this thing of what a man is supposed to be, or like this thing of what it looks like to be resilient at all times, or this thing of what it looks like to be completely emotionally vulnerable at all times. And there's nothing like wrong with that. We're kind of like giving the game what it needs.
Yeah, and I think, when I think of maybe the difference between our generation and previous generations that weren't having these conversations at our ages is they didn't have the tools, right? Like, I feel like this is a story, anecdotally, you might hear about this kind of stuff all the time. Like, oh, had this father and he was just like non-emotional and he was like, he never showed me that he cared or, things like that.
Mhm.
And, it's like, yeah, I think they may not doubt that this person cared, but they just didn't have the tools. Right. And I think so many men, just based on, a lot of stuff that we're seeing in the world, are lacking those tools. Specifically, I mean, the CDC reports that 80% of suicides in the US are men.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a number of reasons that that happens, right? But I think one of them is that they're unable to apply these different frameworks at different times. Like they're going through something, but reach out to someone, talk to somebody, like share it with someone.
Yeah, 100%. That can be, I felt like that at times of my life, and it can be like really hard to do. It's the right word is isolated. You feel like there isn't eating, but you wouldn't even know how to reach out,
Right. Yeah, because
how to talk to somebody.
yeah, that's like a process, right? Like, and it's like if I just don't even, yeah, I definitely felt that feeling too, man. Where it's like I'm going through this thing, and it's like, man, I really could probably benefit from talking to somebody, but I just don't even have like a step by step like series
Yeah.
of yeah,
Yeah, then there's also, I think this, when I think back on some of those times, even now, there's like this sense of pride that I may have now about like being able to work through things on my own, even when it was so hard. And that's something that I look back now and man, there's this. I saw David Goggins one time.
and that was my guy.
It's like, yeah, now he's just super intense. Definitely not everybody's cup of tea,
And not my cup of tea all the time.
right? But I think that I can do anything and I'll prove it to you no matter what. Philosophy is good to have in your toolkit at times, right? There's a time and a place for that. And he has this thing that he says where you have it's like a cookie jar. And when things get hard or he feels down, you can like think back to this jar of cookies that he has, of all the like accomplishments he's done, all the hard things that he's kind of worked through. And you like see that and it like feels good to be able to take one of these things out and be like, oh, like I can do this.
Hmm.
And so weirdly, I guess what is happening right now is that I'm having like multiple feelings about all of these things. I don't think that it's healthy or efficient or even easy or the best way to get through something to like struggle through it on your own. That's clearly not the answer. Especially when you talk about that CDC statistic
Right.
with men in the US. Eh, but at the same time, there's like that thing inside me of like being prideful and being a man and being able to work through things. Like there's a piece that has like that is stuck deep in me. I'm also an athlete, and so there's like football is a a traditionally a tough sport.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta have that mentality, and then it's about all it can be harmful, right? For many years, the thing that they would tell you is kind of like you want to run as hard as you can through another person, and and you get up and you're kind of woozy, and they'll be like, "Ah, you just got your bell rung," but no, that was a concussion.
Right.
You did real damage to your brain right there, and maybe you'll pay for it later. Maybe you'll pay for it sooner.
Yeah.
And so it's like it can be harmful. It can be harmful, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with like having a tough mindset and being able to rely on that and like lean on that when you need it. I mean, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been able to get to grad school if that were the case. I wouldn't be able to do most of the things that I'm able to do.
Yeah, and it's interesting how I think our philosophies are kind of like similar, and then maybe in some ways they diverge. Because I went to a big football school in high school, but I actually really got into distance running, which I'm not like physically built for. But yeah, I ran the LA Marathon, which I told you about before.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I think the marathon mentality is so different from this mentality of kind of like explosive, competitive, like high competitive athletes. And because I think the reason I was able to run a marathon is by applying another tool in my toolkit, which is from this book, Atomic Habits, which I
Yeah.
think we've also talked about,
Mhm.
where the idea is that, instead of beating yourself up because you're not sufficiently motivated to achieve a task every day, you think of yourself as an engineer of the right system. And so, as an engineer, this system is inadequate to put myself on autopilot to achieve a task.
Yeah.
And I think up until that point, literally from reading that book, which the word habits, I was always kind of, I would say like, I had this aversion to the word habits. Like it felt like routines and it felt like prison. And I wanted to like freestyle my life the whole time. And I realized that these systems and these structures provide the things that I need to actually achieve these bigger goals,
Yeah.
like running a marathon or like building a podcast show. It's like, if we don't want to like burn ourselves all the way out trying to do this, we want to do little bits every day, little deposits here and there. And I think that tool can also be helpful from a mental health perspective.
100%. I like that what you just said, thinking of yourself of the engineer, the system that is your life,
Mm.
and, realizing that, um, you think of, creating like an environment that has obstacles and your goal is to get the ball from one end to the other. You could engineer this to have rocks all over the place. You could engineer it so that, it's kind of, a divot
Mm.
through the middle where the ball easily rolls through. You can engineer it in any way. And if the ball isn't reaching it to the other side, perhaps the best thing to do is not to like push the ball harder or kick it harder or even change the ball at all. Maybe the best thing to do is to change the environment, change all the things so that the outcome that you're looking for is a little bit easier. There's a little bit less resistance and like figuring out. So, I mean, I think that's a great book. I love that book.
Yeah.
And thinking about being the engineer that can like optimize the parts of your life that may be slowing you down.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great helpful tool for people. And I want to kind of get into some of the more scientific aspects of this. Yeah, so one of the other things that I think is really interesting is this parasympathetic nervous system, right? And this idea of stress, right? Something I remember studying a long time ago was that there's like these different types of stresses on the body, right? There's this eustress, right? If you're procrastinating at the last minute, you feel this like rush to get stuff done, and that's like good stress because it like propels you into action and achieving the things you want to achieve. And there's distress, which kind of can disorient you and things like that. And these are all a lot of times derivatives of the fight or flight response, right? That, our hardware, right? Like our brains are used to being in the wild and perceiving these real threats to our lives. And so our body can sometimes have these reactions to deadlines and minuscule things that are reminiscent of a lion attacking us in the African savannah.
Right. And that can be what it feels like too if you're in like a state of heightened anxiety.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think, again, that it's a matter of having the right tools in our toolkit to actually address these things and be aware of like, this is what is happening. Okay? This is not actually that big of a deal, and then it kind of goes back to what you were saying about the cosmic perspective. I think that's a great tool.
Yeah, yeah. We're sort of trying to um it's like we were vibe coded for for an environment that we're no longer in.
Yeah.
And instead of like going through and rewriting everything, just kind of like sticking patches and amendments on the end and like making some loops and that sort of thing. And so we have to like figure out what those addendums are. Like how can we modulate this experience so that it's we're not like suffering in this way? Because I mean, I think that that's such a compelling. I love the evolutionary biology. I love the Evo Psych and the Evo Bio framework for thinking about things. It can be hard because you can't test a lot of those ideas.
Hmm.
Like we can't go back and see what humans were thinking and what their cultural experience was 300,000 years ago when they were hunters and gatherers.
Right.
But, sometimes you can construct frameworks that do make sense. And yeah, like this, you didn't think about emotions at all. Like, why are there emotions? Most people don't know this. Charles Darwin wrote The Origin of Species,
Hmm.
kind of. I mean, most people know that. That he's sort of the,
Wonder if most people know that actually. And
I don't know, but he kind of built out this framework, this early framework for evolution, where species come from. They evolve over time from common ancestors.
mm,
He also wrote a book about the origin of emotions. Where do emotions come from? I think once you start to build this biological understanding of animals evolving over time to adapt and survive with their environments, with the other animals and plants around them, then you realize that the things that animals are doing, the experiences that they're having are a part of that process,
mm,
and that emotions also evolved for a reason. And I don't think that it was to like put us in tune with nature or even with ourselves. I think that it's more so tapped in certain ways, right? Like a mother feeling intense love for a baby she just gave birth to is going to cause her to want to do everything to help that baby survive, which in the case of humans, a baby is very helpless.
yeah, and it's a parasite in womb.
Right.
Yeah,
It's siphoning off resources, right? But it's like that connection is really important, and love is something that you want to take care of. You want to help it grow. Like a baby cannot go get their own food. You think about like horse. When a horse is born, I think they can't stand up for a couple minutes, but then they get up and they start running around. Right? They're like they're not big or strong or anything, but they're at least mobile. A baby can't do that for a long time. So they're literally weight that a mother would have to carry around with her. And so you think about emotion like love, or think about some other emotions, greed, emotions that we all seem to have, jealousy, anger. What's the reason for these? Depression, even, and that one is interesting. So I did look up um, so something that I would always consider is like, why is this like what you just said? Why is this an experience that I'm having? And there are some hypotheses. Again, these can be hard to test
mhm.
because we can't go back and administer surveys to humans hundreds of thousands of years ago. But this idea that I want to get the name right. It is analytical rumination analytical rumination hypothesis, which is this hypothesis, and that's good. It's in the name, hypothesis, that when you feel depressed, it may help you or indicate that there is some thinking that needs to happen about what's going on, about your circumstances. And so oftentimes what comes with depression is kind of like overthinking all these things and ruminating.
Right.
And that that experience of being depressed is like nature's way or your body's way of getting you to try and figure out what's going on, what needs to change, like what is misaligned with what you're experiencing.
Right. And yeah, I think obviously important distinction there is that this is still hypothetical, but I think it's an interesting exploration. Yeah. Also, what I think a lot of people would cite when they're depressed is that they feel immobilized, right? Like they're kind of like not moving around. They're not expending a lot of physical energy.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of like maybe sitting still. They can't get up, but their minds are kind of working overtime. Like they're overthinking a lot of
Yeah.
different things. Or that's how the sensation might feel for me sometimes, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And this would, I guess, that would another important thing to add. This sort of would exclude if you, had like some clinical offset of or some clinical imbalance in neurochemicals or something like that. But I think more of it's like a type of depression that we're all prone to from time to time. And yeah, I think that that's like in sort of an interesting framework. It hits especially hard for me, even if this is anecdotal, because the times that I've felt most depressed are times where in my life things are not the way that I want them to be. Deep down, how I want my life to look, what I wish that I were doing day to day was not what was happening. That's like a depressing experience. And, if I could change things, there are many things that I would change. And I feel like over many years, I have been able to do that. And I, feel much more happy over generally. I think we all have these like cyclical, our emotions go up and down, but that, yeah, I mean, I think that that's kind of a helpful framework. Like, what's going wrong that could be making me feel like this?
Yeah, so I think this is another interesting kind of piece here. Like, what are some of the ways that you might, therapize, right? How do you heal yourself from these things, right? Because I think a lot of the common examples are that they're examples that may rejuvenate some people, don't rejuvenate others. Like I think about my experience. I was at a spa like a week or so ago, and I was sitting in there like, what am I doing here, man? Like they were trying to, give me this massage, and I was laying in this pool. And then at the end, like the feeling that I anticipated, which was like relief and being refreshed, and oh, I just did self care. My feet are nice and soothing. Feel like I just was like, wow. And then the next day, I there was two of my guys in New York, and we ran 5 miles at a 7 minute and 30-second pace, and I'm over 200 pounds. So that was a challenge. And I felt the feeling that I think I was supposed to feel, or that most people probably feel leaving a spa.
That rejuvenated feeling.
Yeah, and I felt like, like again, I was stuck in a rut because I stressed with the experience I had, recently. And this kind of, this got me going. This had got me hyped. I was energized the rest of the day off of like conquering this challenge.
Yeah. That's it's so interesting how different people respond to different things. Like we know this, right? And people are different. Things that work for one person may not work to the next. Cause I know tons of people, well, I myself, I love a nice little spa day. Like I like getting a massage and just relaxing. I also get that great feeling that is really um not replicable anywhere in life. When I go to the gym and work out, I don't like running long distances like you do.
Either.
Yeah, I get that when I lift weights and am physically active. And I think that a pretty cool thing, there have been several meta-analyses now that have come out and confirmed that one of the best things that you can do for your mental and emotional well-being, which can be broadly defined, is to be physically active, to have maintain a consistent exercise routine. And the importance here, because there's so many studies in a meta-analysis, the idea is that they look at a lot of studies, maybe hundreds of studies that have all done different types of sampling, and all may have different biases. And when you do a meta-analysis, the idea is that you can marginalize out those biases by looking at a large enough set of studies. It's kind of like doing
Study or study.
a study of studies, exactly. And you can start to believe those results a little bit more. And this one that I'm talking about, this meta analysis, and I'm talking about, so it's called Effect of Exercise for Depression: Systematic Review in Network Meta-Analysis of Randomized Control Trials. So this came out is a relatively recent, 2024. So
Is there anything abstract about the amount of exercise? Because I've always heard things about 30 minutes a day. It's like try to get around 30 minutes a day every week.
yeah, it's the number that seems to be, yeah, it's like three. The one that I see, because there's several different meta-analyses, it's like around 3 times a week for like 30 minutes. Right. So that's not even that much. And a brisk walk can be exercise. And if you ever gotten into the habit of walking, which I did during grad school, it's like you're sitting in the computer for hours.
Mm.
I need to get up and go and walk around. It does. You can get your heart rate going.
Yeah, one day I'll actually want us to shoot a podcast where we're actually walking in like a park or something and talking. Like,
Curiosity theory, a walk in the park.
yeah, man. I think I mean,
Trademark.
yeah, when you yeah, trademark that for sure. When you think about like some of the, greatest thinkers and even just the mental state that you're in, like I think us sitting down, which is pretty much every podcast, people sitting down talking, I'm like how different would it be if we were mobile, moving around, and what kind of conversations what might we have that we wouldn't otherwise have?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's some,
You'd probably feel better.
yeah, yeah,
But I guess in the to put a little bit more to the meta analysis, it's that the big takeaway is that the positive benefits seen from positive effects seen from that number of exercise, like half the days of the week, roughly, for just 30 or 45 minutes, is on par with. It's not statistically different from the reported mental health benefits from medication. So, I mean, that's powerful to me. Like you're talking about staying consistently physically active. There's scientific evidence that that can be as beneficial as leading medication. Now, it could be SSRIs, antidepressant. There's tons of different medication that people take. So, it's probably case dependent to some extent. But I think that's like an important thing to know, that you're not feeling great. Literally, the science tells us that if you try to be a little bit more active, that could help. And that's something that you can like try out for yourself
Yeah.
and see if it works for you. And maybe it won't. And maybe that like is a part that something that you'd need to sort of like supplement with medication, and you should be talking to a mental health professional obviously
Right.
for this sort of thing. But for me it's very compelling, especially with my experience of how important I've realized that it is to be physically active and what that does for me.
So therapeutic, man.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll hoop for like 2 or 3 hours, and even for me specifically, like competition, even if I don't win every game, just feeling the feeling of my body getting into this flow state.
Yeah.
But I think you have to get to a certain level of fitness to feel that. But I don't. I think that that's accessible for everybody with a little bit of time, right?
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the Blue Zones documentary a while back on Netflix, and this documentary, highlights these people over the age of 100 that live all over the world, like different regions of high concentrations. And a lot of these folks would be doing 2 to 3 hours of physical activity a day. In Okinawa, Japan specifically, everyone there pretty much grew their own crops and gardened their own vegetables,
Mhm.
lived in these communal pods. So they had a lot of social interaction, which I think is the thing a lot of men generally cite as missing in their lives, like so an extended community. And so they had that here, right? Or in these places, right? Like they didn't think about, I think sometimes we think of the financial pressures of like, oh, like if you and I live together, that would be kind of awkward. Like we're both grown men, right? And we had this like sense of what is proper based on,
Wait, we can't be friends?
yeah, like, yeah, we're living together. Like, so, but these, folks in Japan, they're living in these pods, they're doing 2 to 3 hours of work a day and living past 100. They're not living these sedentary lives that I think a lot of times are normalized in America. And that seems to have a positive effect on their mental health. Like it's based on, the anecdotal experiences of the folks that they interviewed, documented.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm looking up now. I remember talked about this before, and somebody pointed out that the Blue Zones thing had been debunked.
The blue zones have been debunked.
That they did like some inconsistent or
Interesting.
reporting on it's like in general, I think that the takeaways are scientifically supported, which is that if you're physically active, you're eating a relatively healthy diet and you have a strong community, that these are things that are important for that as a longevity. But they yeah, that's what I'm trying to look up right now.
Yeah, no, that's really intriguing though, man. Like the idea of debunking blue zones. I think it is still powerful to get anecdotal testimonies from people living over 100,
Yeah.
how they live their lives.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's definitely some power in that. So
yeah,
yeah, that's like whether or not the results from the original research are like specifically true. I think it was like that a lot of them didn't have, maybe some people didn't have documentation that they were over 100 years. People were lying or something like that.
Oh, I guess that would be a significant issue.
Yeah.
Someone's like 80 and they're claiming to be 100.
Yeah, but generally though, we could pull up studies for days that show physical activity, um, being connected with other people, having strong community, and generally trying to eat as healthy as you can. It's not always easy. Are things that are positive longevity indicators for sure.
So tell me if I'm precise when I'm using this language. We talked about this a little bit before, but there might be this link, and I think this is early research, right, between higher testosterone levels and a positive experience.
Okay, so this was a super, super interesting study, to me at least.
No, I think it's fascinating.
The 2015 study called a positive effective neuroendocrinology approach to reward and behavioral dysregulation. A mouthful. But I went through to the best of my ability this paper, which somebody had told me about. which the gist of it is that they were able to make statistically significant correlations to positive experiences that people who had higher levels of testosterone had when encountering like challenging or hard experiences. Essentially, the if you had more testosterone, you would have a more positive and rewarding experience with challenging something that was challenging, like
Yeah.
a really tough obstacle, and that sounded it sounds interesting and it sounds right because I love the idea of overcoming a tough challenge. It feels good. You think about like even like the process of lifting weights. What is so fun about that? It feels good to like take this weight that is the earth is trying to crush you with, right? Gravity, and to like push it off. There's like something that feels good about attacking a challenge,
Yeah.
doing something with difficulty, getting through it. It feels good, and it's interesting that there could be a correlation there with testosterone.
I mean, it would seem to justify my story about running, right? Which I actually feel like is a very similar experience to lifting weights, and you described it in that way.
Yeah.
Where it's like I feels like I'm fighting against gravity, and there's this internal voice in like, in my psyche that's like, "Dude, stop! This hurts." And I'm like, "No, I can't. I can't keep going." And you're like fighting against that and fighting against gravity,
Yeah.
and like when you get to a certain state, which they refer to as the runner's high,
Mhm.
right? You start to experience this like rush of like I am like I don't know. It's kind of like describing it just from personal experience. It feels like I'm like a robot and I'm perfectly efficient.
So that's like a dopamine flooding event,
Yeah.
like when you're like getting through it, and it's like in the moment you just feel good as you're overcoming these.
But is there like a weightlifter's high like that? Do you feel like you ever get something to that extent that you would say, man, I got
Well, I've done cardio long, for 30, 40, 50 minutes before, and I have felt that,
mm,
and I don't really think that at least what I feel from lifting weights is the same. It's
mm,
different. And after I get done, I also feel a little bit different, but maybe like a version of that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think when I'm running, I think the high doesn't hit me until around like after an hour of running.
Hmm.
But it's but before the high, I'm starting to feel tired. I'm starting to feel a little sluggish. And then sometimes it'll be triggered, and again, this is purely anecdotal, but it'll be triggered by like maybe one of my good songs comes on, on my headphones on,
Yeah.
and then I'll feel like literally this physical rush, and then I'll just be energized again. And that's like after 6 miles of running.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's like this. What is this? There's like the second wing, right?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, what I think is also fascinating is this idea that our ancestors were persistence hunters, and so from an evolutionary perspective, this idea of being able to like there might be animals that were faster than us,
All animals are faster
yeah,
than us.
but
You have
because
running 2 legs.
right because of our ability to dissipate heat through our sweat glands and not having like fur, like a dense amount of hair on our bodies, we're able to dissipate heat over long periods and like outlast these animals that are faster than us and maybe hunt them down. And
Yeah, and just kind of like overheat, right?
right,
Because all they can do is pant.
right. But like I could imagine, if you're like on this hunt and you're like 6 months in and you feel that rush, like that could have a powerful significance and your ability to action hunt. And I know we're maybe veering into some evolutionary psychology territory, but that
Right,
I think
we're
it's
like,
pretty interesting.
yeah, I mean, like that is interesting, and there are tribes of people that are still subsistence hunters that do that to this day, and I think it's like accepted that that was one of the ways that we hunted large animals, which you know, hands up, we don't really have a chance to beat.
Mm,
But if you literally just chase them until they're exhausted, that some like they could just die from exhaustion,
yeah.
right? And you just walk up and stab it with a spear or something like that. There's not much of a struggle. And we know that like animals in the wild, they can sprint. Even if you look at like a lion hunting whatever a gazelle, something like that. And like both animals sprint, but it's not for a super long time. Right? The
Mhm.
gazelle just kind of needs to get away. The lion will kind of give up if it realizes that it's going to be wasting energy or something like that. So yeah, I mean it's pretty compelling. I think that's pretty interesting.
I think of in my personal experience being challenged. I perk up when it's like, oh, you think I can't do that?
Yeah, like that's
I think it excites.
it is, man. It's like an extra, you like an extra bit of energy. I say it all the time. There's like people, they're like like people that like don't like me or that want to see me fail or just rub them the wrong way. When they say negative things to me, they're making a mistake because that drives me so much more than hearing positive things. And it's like if you really wanted to see if I just kind of like throttled down and fell off on my own, you should just say, "Hey man, love the video, great job, keep it up." But you're a huge fan. But when you like when people say those negative things, I mean, it just drives me so much.
What if there was now? Please, nobody take this as mental health advice. But what if there were like a novel therapy where people just tried to talk down on you? It's for specific people.
I mean, you could pay for those services. You can pay for those services. Don't yeah. I don't know if I'm into that necessarily.
But actually, there's a hilarious point. Like you, people are paying for that, right? So clearly they value it.
But I well, just think that that's different though, because I'm not sure if in those circumstances,
It's therapeutic.
why I'm not going to say that it's not therapeutic, but I don't think it's like motivating people to like strive harder in their lives. Like,
Yeah.
are we thinking of the same thing? I'm thinking of like guys who are paying like
The dominatrix.
dominatrix to like
Yes,
step on their necks or
that's definitely what I'm thinking about. I mean, but I want like I don't know
I don't think that those guys are down there like, yes, I'm gonna work so hard at
to prove. I don't know, man. Like
no
never
way, man.
never paid a dominatrix before.
Neither have I.
Let me preface my statement with
This was you. I thought you were the expert here.
I'm putting myself in the shoes of one of these guys, and I'm like, man,
With some red bottoms around your throat.
I don't know. Maybe that's what they want. So, like, if you're in a position in life where you're on top of the world, like a lot of times these are like wealthy guys that can afford to pay for something like
That is the yeah, I mean that's like the cliche.
right, the cliche. And so, you're on top of the world. Everyone's kind of affirming you constantly. Great job, man. You're doing such a good job. The business is doing well. You're making a lot of money. And then finally, someone speaks to you in a way that no one talks to you. Like, do you feel like a certain fire like reignited in you that maybe the younger version of you felt when you had to prove yourself more?
Maybe, man. Maybe we're talking. Maybe it is the same thing. I don't know.
Is it therapeutic? I don't know.
Maybe I will say this in my relationships. I'm not looking for that. I feel like I got people trying to be mean to me on the internet.
I would also say in any relationship in my life, I'm not seeking an antagonistic dynamic like that.
Yeah.
I do think I've evolved away from that.
Still?
I think at one time in my life, I would just appreciate people around me that were just like doubted me constantly.
Oh, don't anymore?
I don't feel like that's healthy. Yeah, I don't feel like that.
Like you don't think it's healthy?
Well, so for someone to like, I like want someone around me that actually genuinely,
Oh, okay. You're talking about like people that you're close to.
yeah, right. Like this, there might be people that have been around me that were like, yeah, I don't think you do that, but like it felt real. Like they really doubted me.
Oh yeah, those. Oh yeah, that energy you gotta like cut off. You gotta cut the because that affects you, right? It's like if it's a random person or whatever, that has something negative to say, that's like they can just be like a little coin into the motivation jar. But if it's somebody that you're genuinely spending time with, that you're genuinely close to, now that's terrible. I feel like that is the sort of thing that will actually like weigh you down.
Eventually, for
Just
sure.
like a frenemy situation.
Exactly. And I think, a younger, less developed version, you get a rush from something like that. And now I'm kind of just like that unhealthy stuff just that don't even attract me, man. Like,
No, yeah, man. I'm with you. I want like positivity around me. I want to be around inspiring people
right.
and people that are like want to be inspired in life.
Right. I think that's a great framework to just kind of have your bubble, right, of like positivity, encouragement, people that inspire you. And then look, the outside world is not going to be that, right? Whenever you make a video that reaches a certain amount of people, like we get support. It's like a core group of us. I think it's such a fascinating like ideas. Whereas like the first degree, second degree network of people like really rock with us. Kind of, you're like, oh, you guys are bringing great conversations into the zeitgeist. And then like the third and fourth degree people, like, man, I hate these guys. I wish someone would talk about something smart for a change. Like, where'd you get that from?
Look, man, we recently there was a video, what was it? It was on bipedalism. It was from the astrobiology episode,
Yeah.
bipedalism. And we the conversation that we were having, it kind of went in this direction of we oftentimes in sci-fi depict aliens as being bipedal intelligent species.
Mm.
And we were talking about, it's like that's actually the end of a long chain of assumptions based on specifically humans and Earth-like life. And I don't think that we need to make all those assumptions. Like, how will we know what life looks in another place? The only way to be sure that we weren't infecting it, this idea, our hypothesis or our prediction with an Earth bias or human bias, is to start look at all the assumptions being made. And so that's kind of like what I was doing. There's no reason that an intelligent species has to be bipedal. It could be many things. Or if you're on a planet where the things that crawled out of the ocean all had like 12 appendages, I don't know how, you know what I mean? And there were several people who were like, "Oh, you guys think you're so smart? You can't figure out why you need two legs and two hands so you can manipulate the environment?" And I'm like, "Bro, do you think that you just sat there and figured out that humans use their hands and manipulate the environment? Like, this is not a novel idea. Yes, we've thought about that.
Yeah.
That's we're saying that that is an assumption."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, look, there's always going to be people that are coming at you, right, with some kind of negative energy. If you do something that reaches a sufficient size of people,
Yeah.
you're going to find someone that is deeply disagrees with what you're saying or just hates you for existing.
Just hate your guts.
But, I think, for everybody listening, it's important to curate that sphere, right? That sphere of positivity and influence, because the world's going to come at you, and you have to, in my eyes, have to have the tools to be ready as an individual, but also build the community around you that can support you when those tools don't work for you.
100%. And to realize that that responsibility lies squarely on your shoulders. Whether the people near you are positive or negative influences, whether they're trying to lift you up or whether they're pulling you down, you're not going to have an auditor come through and tell you, what relationships are good for you and what ones aren't. You're the auditor. You have to be able to do that. And it can be difficult. You imagine you have like one of these frenemies in your life that you've maybe known your whole life, right? Or years, or it's like you've got to have that agency to know, what who is in this curated, I like how you said that, this curated sphere of positive, impactful people that you want around you that make you feel good about yourself and make you like look forward to seeing them and hanging out with them and what's coming in the future. It's really important that you kind of like have the guts to shape that for yourself and not just let it happen to you.
Yeah, and I think this is related to that, man. Like on a note of like building the sphere, community building is a huge part of that, right? Building this group of people, and I think that's something that a lot of times in our, we're thinking about ourselves first. I'm trying to think of the word for it. Individualism. Yeah, individualism is like rampant in America, for sure.
Sure, right?
And as a digital nomad now for the past 160 days, it's kind of crazy to think about. I've been
Can you explain what a digital nomad is?
Yeah. I've been basically since January, I closed down my apartment lease in Los Angeles, and I've been traveling all over the world, all over the country. And so I like crashed with a lot of friends. I've like rented out a couple apartments for a couple months here and there. Even stayed with my mom for a little bit. And
So you just don't have like a
a physical,
crew, like how,
yeah. So I'm real mad.
kind of like bouncing.
Right. And the digital part of it is how I'm actually sustaining myself. So I built a career that doesn't require me to be in a physical space. And so I make money doing digital things, like branded content, public speaking engagements don't have to be in one place. Right. And so that has kind of allowed me to have this next generation version of community, which I think sometimes in LA, I think when things are so spread apart, you kind of like get in your bubble and you kind of get isolated, and it's kind of hard to, like reach out to people. And then you like to hang out with someone for a day, I feel like requires a lot of advance notice and scheduling coordination. And it's felt like I've had so much more community as a digital nomad than I have like as this like individual person living in my own space.
Yeah.
And I think that's been fascinating to explore because I'd have to be a lot more giving of myself to receive that community as well. Like sometimes I'll live with friends for like a couple weeks. I'll help them with little projects around the house. I'll build out their studio space and stuff. And just stuff that I would have loved to have done for people, I'm able to do, and then also receive their generosity as well. And like there's I have like a list of rules to being a nomad to make sure I don't like wear out my welcome or take advantage of people, be a freeloader and stuff like that too.
Yeah. How long do you feel like you will continue?
I think I might be on the way out of this chapter. I'm saying that right now. But it feels like I need to like establish myself again, even if it's not like a long the house that I'm living in with a white picket fence, but more so just like a home base of operations.
Yeah.
So that I can kind of nomad in seasons when I need to, and it doesn't like cost me too much money to like move around. No.
Yeah. 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 What do you feel like? So if to kind of reflect on what you were just saying, feels like you've kind of like strengthened, oddly enough, you've strengthened your community by not being in a physical community.
Right. It's very contrary. I think that was one of the things that I thought I was giving up. Like, oh, okay, I'm leaving Los Angeles. I built this space here with all these people. Like, I'm gonna miss out on having these people. But because we're a very internet first society, right? Like, it doesn't feel like I've lost contact. Conversely, though, I think I've been in more proximate physically to people than before, right? So I'm like I think when I was living by myself in LA, I would like go for like a week or so without seeing people sometimes. That was like a pretty common experience. And I think for folks that work remotely, like I'm sure they can relate to that. Whereas like if I'm like always living with friends, crashing on couches, like I'm never alone. And I think it's just it's a different type of community, but it is a community.
Yeah, well, I've heard people say, or you hear people say that the internet isn't real, like it's not a real place.
They're dead internet theory.
But it is though. The internet is a real place. The communities on the internet are real. They are really made of people. They're not a physical location, but they are a digital location. They're somewhere, right? Like that is a thing. You can build relationships with a community of people online that can be way more meaningful than the relationships that you have with the people in like your immediate physical community. Like it's possible. There's no reason in theory why you couldn't do that. Why you couldn't find the people who are perfectly in your tribe or like much more compatible because you kind of like spread your net and you can find people based on ideas alone and not based on proximity.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beautiful things about the internet is that it's brought people with maybe niche ideas closer together than we've ever been able to be. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably someone that I know in the first 5 seconds that you're having deep interest in natural physics, but that might be
What gives it away?
man, I don't know if it's the tattoos or the fact that you would probably give someone a fun fact in the first 5 seconds of meeting them.
You think so? I don't feel like I come off like that as a new acquaintance.
Yeah, no, probably not. But yeah, and so that actually reinforces my point more. But this idea that we kind of have to hide these obsessions or passions that we have to just seem a little more palatable, and when we're like every day interacting with the world.
Yeah,
But like we can easily come together and be excited about our niche thing.
definitely. It's funny that you say that because every once in a while when I'm out, I'll run into somebody that is like, "Hey, do you make like talk about astronomy, talk about astrophysics online?" And it like makes me happy because I think that they're about to ask me something about space. A lot of times, what follows up there is like, "No, I wanted to ask you, such and such, such and such." Yeah, and it's
It's not most people actually hate that though. Like that are not like have a platform. They hate to be like brought into like
a
conversation.
conversation about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it because, if I'm out and about, it's been at least like an hour since I had made a video about space, or it's been at least like an hour since I talked about it.
Mhm.
Maybe I just came from the gym or, was running an errand. And I like to talk about this stuff. I mean, I like it so much that I'll sit in front of a podcast mic all day and talk about these things.
Dude, I could talk about this stuff all day too.
Right.
I guess that's why I probably had that impression of you because we met through Moya, who's also an astrophysicist,
Mhm.
and like that was the vibe immediately. So I guess we kind of both knew that we were on the same
Yeah.
time.
Dr. Moya McTeer, too.
Yeah, shout out.
She has her own podcast,
Yeah,
Pale Blue Pod.
yeah,
Um,
very dope individual.
yes.
Yeah, Harvard,
And a couple books.
Columbia PhD, couple books. Yeah, she's doing her thing. But yeah, man. So I think that hopefully folks found this educational. We talked about personal experiences. We gave some tools, some tactics, and hopefully a bit of frameworks and philosophies that you can use to figure out your own mental health situation and do what works best for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of Curiosity Theory. We'll catch you all on the next one.